So I'm not really sure exactly how to approach this video. For context, so first of all, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. If you haven't watched my content or channel before, feel free to subscribe, check things out, all that stuff. I do a lot of things from covering Kickstarters to reviewing games. I don't actually usually do this pitch at the beginning or the end of most of my videos. Once in a while, it makes its way in. And if you're already a viewer, you already know who I am, then great. I don't know what I'm doing. Either way, let's go ahead and go past that. So, I went to Origins recently, which many of you already know because I've talked about it a few times, and it's one of those weird things, like, it is a big deal to me. It was my first convention ever. I've talked about this a few times in the past. I never really felt the need to go to a convention, even though I've been in the board game space for 10 years now, 9 years just shy, 10-ish years basically, and never really felt the need to go to a convention for a variety of reasons. But since becoming a content creator, since doing YouTube, many of the pros and cons of going, I always had an interest, but never enough to justify the time, the expense, the fact that I'm leaving children behind, leaving work, all of those things, and content creation has changed that. And this video is going to be a bit of a hybrid. It's going to be a little bit of my Origins haul, so to speak, the things I came back with from Origins, including some things that I didn't get at Origins as well. We're going to be covering all the stuff I've gotten in the past week, basically. And then, as well as that, talking about my experience at a convention. Because it was my first experience at a convention. And that won't necessarily be helpful information to some of you. But for those of you who are thinking of going, who are looking at it, it might be helpful to have a frame of mind around, well, what I went through, all of that. And let's go ahead and get into it. But before we do, I will have timestamps down below, and those timestamps are going to refer to the randomly selected parts of the video where I choose something else to talk about. Something to show, to talk about, to go over. And we're going to start with Bitoku. I think that's how you say it. This is going to be from Devere Games, who actually wasn't at Origins. They were at Gen Con, I believe. I wasn't at Gen Con, so I didn't see them there. But I just got this in the mail, and this is going to be, this looks like a heavier game. Well rated so far, although not a lot of ratings. I don't know much about it yet, but it does look very cool. Looks very pretty. I actually just played, what do you call it? I played Luna Capital from Devere Games recently, and really enjoyed that. So overall, Devere has put out some games that I've liked, some games that haven't been as much for me. Silk wasn't as much a game for me. I like the premise of it, but in execution there are other abstract games I prefer. Luna Capital is delightful. Hopefully I'll cover that on the channel at some point. But either way, Bitoku is, well, lovely looking. We'll talk about it more at some point. But this was waiting for me when I got home from Origins. So that's the first thing that just showed up there. These are going to be the random timestamps. But maybe 2 weeks before Origins was when I officially locked in that I was going. It's a balance. It's still a balance in my life. I still have work. I still have kids. There's things I want to do, and then there's things that I am going to do. And it's a balance between knowing as well what I have time, resources for, or in general what I'm going to do. Like, I have a better idea now of the next cons I'm going to and how I'm going to handle those. But I was walking into this one fairly blind. But eventually I scheduled my tickets. I, booked it. Basically, I was going to go Thursday, Friday, come back home Saturday, and then go back out Sunday. Fortunately, I'm in Cleveland, 2-hour drive from Columbus, making it very reasonable for me to do something like that. That won't always be viable for future cons. And the Saturday thing, for context, is, as a religious Jew, I'm not really... The Saturday thing is mostly off limits. The balance of what I can and can't do. I can play games on Saturday. I can walk around on Saturday. I can't mess around with lights or signs or pictures. A whole bunch of things that I can't do on Saturday, which makes navigating a con something that I could do, but would be tricky. Meaning it may well happen one day. I don't know. But it's just not something that I'm rushing into. It's kind of like, if you're gluten intolerant, eating out at a restaurant that has gluten left, right, and center. You can probably avoid it, but you'll have to try a little hard. Sometimes it's better just to not bother and eat at home. It's actually a fairly decent analogy, but either way, I went home Saturday, so to avoid all that, just, again, a quick drive. And I think that was a good overall experience for me. Thursday, Friday, and then again Sunday gave me a lot of the convention experience. There's going to be different aspects to a convention. There's going to be the convention itself. There's going to be meeting friends, seeing faces, people you know already, or meeting new people that you'll be able to remember and engage with the next time. You may sit down at tables to play games with people. You may run into different people. You'll recognize different booth, goers. Very often the people who run these booths for various stores may well be the same person for 2-3 years in a row, or perhaps longer sometimes. And so there's a lot of acquaintance building in these conventions, a lot of acquaintance building in trying to figure out who you're meeting that you already know and who you're, getting to learn along the way. Now, speaking of acquaintances, and this was not planned or timed, but it does work, I also have Awkward Guests. This is going to be Awkward Guests. They currently have a Kickstarter on. Scandalo is currently be their Kickstarter. Another follow-up game to Awkward Guests. This is supposed to be a really solid deduction game. Haven't played it, but I do like deduction. Looking forward to tabling this one. Shrink's already off because I've already started reading the rules for this one. That's going to be true of a bunch of the games. Sometimes the Shrink's already off because I want to start reading the rules for them. But either way, that's another non-Origins thing. But yeah. So I went for Thursday, Friday, and then Sunday again. Now, a lot of the things you're going to have at convention is going to be the convention itself, but then going back to the guests, the friends, the awkward people kind of thing, there's going to be a lot of after and before convention activities, going to various bars or, you know, just restaurants or whatever it is as you spend time with friends and whatnot. And again, that's a balance as well. The whole religious thing means eating at most restaurants is going to be off limits for me, because the food isn't going to be kosher. I can go to the bar, I can go to the restaurant, but unless it's kosher, I can't really partake in much. Now, bars are actually easier. Beer and, well, wine's tricky, but most beers are pretty fine. Grabbing a, Molson Light, anything like that is almost always fine. It'll be tricky, but I was able to go to a bar, hang out with some people, and just spend the night talking about games, while playing some games, while meeting faces, engaging with, well, people I've been talking to for a year and a half, but never really met face to face. So yeah, that was fun. It was a part of the convention experience that I didn't really plan around, but I did enjoy myself. Now, sleeping in my car, I did not enjoy. So if you follow Quackalope, you already know that he regularly sleeps in his car, or maybe you don't know that and I just told you, but he's someone who goes traveling a lot, and he travels enough that he has made sleeping in a car a way to get around. And I was like, I'll do that. It's one of those weird balances. Like, I'm only there for one night. I'm there for Thursday night. Do I really want to get a hotel room just for one night? And even then, I wasn't even sure I was staying Thursday night. So it was a weird balance of, do I want to rent a hotel room? Maybe I'll just drive back, maybe not. And so I tried sleeping in my car. Turns out I could get away with that when I was much younger. But now, aside from the noise was easier once I dealt with noise reducing headphones, but it's not great for my back. So I don't think I'll be doing that again. I don't know. It wasn't the worst. It's a weird balance. It's like, I'll spend the money if I need to, but do you want to spend the money if you don't need to? And for right now, I think I do value a good night's sleep. So we'll be playing with that. But yeah, sleeping in my car at night was not a fun thing. Now, some other games, by the way. We have Whirling Witchcraft. Whirling Witchcraft is going to be from AEG. They sent me this one and 10. We'll show you 10 in a second. But they sent me Whirling Witchcraft, which visually I'm not pulled in by this at all. I have heard some people say good things about this one. Yeah, even component-wise. Component-wise and visually, this does not look like a game that I'm impressed by, but I've heard good things about the gameplay, and that ultimately is king. At one point, I'll be doing a video on why I judge games based on their components, the design, all that. We have Rolling Realms from Stonemaier Games. This is going to be a roll and write that was basically created during COVID, that he paired together, he created on the fly just so people can be busy, have something to do. A whole bunch of his games mixed into a game that he called Rolling Realms. And people enjoyed it enough that Jamie Stegmaier, Stonemaier Games, they published this game. They went ahead and put it out, and review copies have been spreading around of that game. We have Pinpoint, which is going to be from Nauvoo Games. Nauvoo Games, who have, they did The Reckoners, one of my favorite games, also did Stockpile, a really solid game. And Pinpoint is going to be a party game from them. Already read the rules for this one, haven't played it. It's going to be very reminiscent of Wavelength. If you played Wavelength, they're very much going for that kind of vibe of trying to predict each other's mindsets of how much you like, don't like, where something falls in a queue. So that's primarily going to be what Pinpoint is. Again, all these games at some point or another I will have coverage on. For right now, I just don't yet. And then we have 10, another game that I've been reading the rules for. I read a lot of rules. But 10 is going to be from AEG. This one seems more up my alley. A lot of these games that, again, Whirling Witchcraft and judging based on other people saying good things. But otherwise, I wouldn't have gotten this one. 10, on the other hand, I tend to like this genre of games. Games like No Thanks, games like Six Nymph, games like Colorado, games that have a degree of push and pull as you go through a few cards that offer tough decisions. I tend to like that genre of game. Let's go ahead and push this off to the side over there. That's going to be all the non-Origins haul. And we have more games coming. But then past that, so sleeping in my car, not a good idea. Driving into the convention was pretty fun. Oh my gosh. Okay, so this was the worst. So the last hour and a half before getting to the convention, I'm on the highway. It's like not even the last hour and a half. It's like the last half hour. I'm literally pulling off the highway in Columbus, slowly making my way, and I hear a giant bing! Like this weird noise, like as if something metal just majorly struck my car. The car is still driving. I haven't exploded yet. So I keep driving. Because what else are you supposed to do when you're on the highway at, 70 miles an hour and you just hear that loud bing? It's a very solid ping. I should just do bing. That's very, very off-putting. But either way, I keep driving. I park my car in the garage. I'm up like 4 flights. I go into the convention. I start having fun. We'll talk more about the convention things soon. But then, about 2-3 hours in, I need to grab something from my car. And so I go to my car. And I see a puddle of oily liquid just slowly dripping down the parking lot. Parking lots are a little slanted. You can see it dripping down the parking lot. I walk to the other side of my car, desperately hoping that the puddle of oily liquid starts on the other side of my car, because then I'm safe. It would be somebody else's problem, but nothing personal, somebody else. Better you than me. Turns out it is my car. It's definitely my car. I call up a mechanic. And I call like 4 mechanics, none of them answer. I call the 5th mechanic, or it's actually the 3rd mechanic. I call the 3rd mechanic and they answer. And I'm like, I have oily liquid under my car. What should I do? And they're like, well, bring it in. I was like, I can drive it safely there? They're like, should be fine. I don't feel that confident. The degree of casual dismissiveness seems to imply that it's not their life they're playing with. And so I start my car. And the steering wheel does not turn. Like, to be more specific, I go like this to start backing out, and it goes... And I'm like, that's not a good noise. Lots of sound effects in this video. And so I call the mechanic right back up. And I'm like, the steering wheel doesn't want to turn. Should I still bring it in? He's like, how far are you away? I'm like, about 5 minutes. Should be fine. Hangs up. 5 minutes away on the highway. Okay, the highway, where I can't turn my steering wheel. But I don't know what my options are. I'm not calling a tow truck to come into the 4th floor of a parking garage. That doesn't sound like a good idea. I mean, I'm sure it's doable. So this problem has happened to others, but I was like, I'm going to go with the mechanic, and I'll blame him, which is very helpful. If I'm dead, I can blame him. But either way, get into my car, grinding noises as I try to get out of the parking lot, trying to slowly turn, and I'm fighting the steering wheel. Now, for those of you who already know, basically what happened is I lost the power fluids, the fluid power steering thingamajiggy. The fluid that goes into power steering that helps keep your car nice and properly turning so you can actually be working. And you think about it practically. When you turn a car, when you turn the wheels on a car, think about what you're actually turning. And think about how hard that should be. What's really happening is you have mechanical assistance for that actually happening, but that requires tools, fluid, machines, all these things. And the fluid part of that machine is gone. All leaked out from the bottom of my car. And I say all leaked out, I mean all leaked out. We'll get to that. But either way, fighting desperately against the wheel, I make my way down the parking lot, and I'm terrified. Every time I turn, it's one of those long parking lots, you're going lower and lower, and making these big turns, and every single turn, I think I'm going to kill somebody. Primarily myself, but sometimes other people too. I slowly make my way into the freeway, terrified the entire time. Once I'm out of the parking lot, by the way, I breathe a sigh of relief, because at least at this point, I no longer have to deal with a tow truck on the 4th floor parking lot. Things already seem like they'll be easier. Not easy, easier. And so, I finally get to the mechanic, again, driving 60 miles an hour. I won't go 70 now. I'll go 60 miles an hour on the highway trying to turn. The faster I go, the easier it actually is. Not easy, easier. And eventually I get to this mechanic and drop the car off, wait in line, and sit there and just stand there hoping I'm in another city trying to get home the next day, and I have no clue what's happening. And eventually, they take a look, they pick up the car, they put some more power fluid, steering power or whatever into it. You can see it dripping straight out of the car. You can see it's dripping straight out. It's a major leak. It's not a small leak. They call somebody, they get a part, whatever it is, or they tell me, it'll be ready, in 4 hours. It's going to be a few $100s, and they're going to have to fix my car and just completely replace a pipe that got... I don't know how or what happened, but something must have happened. I still don't know if it's at all related to the ding, but I think it is. It must have been. I mean, it doesn't, not must have been, but just, potato, 2 + 2 = 4, that kind of thing. There's the weirdest things I say. Anyways, so that was my car experience. I do have my car back. It's all good now. By all good now, I mean that I drove home from the convention, terrified that something's going to break at any given time. But either way, it seems to be I'm all good now, so we'll see how that goes. That's the car thing. Anyways, either way, this stuff's messed up. Let's talk about some more stuff. Let's talk about Vagrantsong. So, Vagrantsong is going to be a game that I believe sold out of the convention. Many games, in fact, sold out. If you go to both Origins and Gen Con, it was a very good year for retailers. Lots of games just completely sold out because, well, I mean, people want to spend money because the past year and a half they haven't. Vagrantsong is going to be one that, despite the shrink, I've actually played this game twice, just not the copy you see in front of you. I played it on TTS as well as playing Quacklev, Jesse's copy. So I've enjoyed this one so far. I'll have more to talk about it. It's a bit of a boss battler. It doesn't feel as much like a boss battler, at least one round in, but I mean, it is. You have multiple characters fighting against a single character, the degree of escalation, degree of enemy AI. If you're someone who likes Kingdom Death Monster, the enemy AI is on the weaker side. This is going to be more reminiscent of Townsfolk Tussle, while being a very, very different experience at the same time. But it does have that artwork. It's a cool game. I'll talk more about it, but so far I am enjoying Vagrantsong. This can be by Weird Games. Weird Miniatures, Weird Games. Their last board game, I believe, was Darkness Comes Rattling. But this time they have 2 new games, Vagrantsong and another one that we'll talk about soon enough. But that's going to be, let's put this one over here. And then, let's talk about one more as well, which is going to be completely different company, which is going to be Picture Perfect. Different style of game, different everything. Picture Perfect is going to be by Arcane Wonders. This one was also, by the way, these are all Origins games at this point. Picture Perfect did not sell out, not because it didn't sell a lot, it sold a lot, but because Arcane Wonders came prepared. They bought stacks and stacks and stacks and stacks and stacks of games. Furnace and Aquatica. Aquatica's a great game. They have Airland and Sea, Critters at War, which is the cartoon version of Airland and Sea. Whole bunch of games. RWBY, whatever you want to call it. And Picture Perfect is a game about setting up a perfect picture. It's a game about trying to manage different pieces of information that you'll have as you go through the game. So you start off with your own little envelope of what you know and how each character wants to be positioned. You know, this person wants to be next to the dog, that person wants to be behind the fern, next to the table. They want to have their face not seen. Basically, a bunch of picky guesses is what you have before you take your perfect snapshot. A little interesting mechanic, interesting game in terms of trying to juggle that information while also passing around and trading information as well at the same time. Again, trying to set up that perfect picture. So a degree of managing different pieces of information in your head with a degree of trading information in it. Very unique in what it's doing. Feels like, you know, one part Clue, one part Grim Masquerade maybe, and one part, you know, one of those Cascadia style games. You're managing different scoring objectives at the same time. Very interesting. I need to play it more, but that's going to be, and I've played this one already. In fact, so far I've played, well, I haven't played these yet, but I've played these. But anyway, that's going to be that. So I got to the convention, and I walk in after, this is the first time around, so I haven't got to the car jammer. I walk in, there's a long line, you know, 45-minute long line to basically pre-register your badge, which is fine because this is something I was warned about day one. I was warned about it before I went to the convention, but I wanted to go anyway early. My first convention, I figured I'll try it out, see what happens. I was warned there's not much point getting there early day one. Day one is already going to be a lighter day. This is at least true for Origins. Where day one, and usually the convention starts Wednesday, then it's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. This year it started Thursday. So Thursday was a lighter day, which means the various booths, the stores setting up whatever it was, weren't open yet. All they had was an open gaming area, and then they had a few open booths. So like actually Vagrantsong was an open booth, for instance. But for the most part, most of the displays were closed down until Friday. And for Thursday, we had the primarily open gaming area, which didn't even open till later. And then once it did open, well, you had to get in. So I was warned that Thursday was a very light day, a day that wasn't that active, didn't have that much going on. And I figured I'll go in anyway. Now, fortunately on my end, I did have a press badge, which gave me a little bit more access to going behind the scenes, but still, Thursday very much was a lighter day. If you're someone who's thinking of going to Origins, if you want to go for the whole thing, by all means, I'd encourage it. If you don't value open gaming that much, I would question whether it's worth going day one, unless, of course, you're meeting up with friends or all of that. But again, something I was warned this beforehand. I chose to go. It was my first convention. I wanted to get a feel for it. This way I know next time. But probably next year, I don't know if I would go day one in the future. I might not. We'll make those decisions at the time, but I'll definitely be going back to Origins. But I don't know if I'll be going day one. Although, day one, I did get to play a game called Gorinto. Gorinto is going to be from Grand Gamers Guild, and this is my favorite Grand Gamers Guild game so far. Gorinto doesn't have a great picture on the back to show you. Gorinto is going to be an abstract experience that supposedly really plays well in teams. Now, I haven't played it in teams so far. I've only played it as a direct two-player game, but the team version does have a little more teamwork, as you might imagine. But it's going to be a game where you're basically taking these little pieces and moving them onto this center grid of a ton of different elements, or whatever you want to call it, in order to gather and score elements, in order to fulfill different scoring objectives that are going to be variable game to game. The team play element of the game seems like it has an element of I grab pieces and I also hand to my teammate, which could be good or bad. It could be a lot more strategy and lots more strategy and cooperation and planning around the team variant. But again, I haven't actually played it with teams. I'll be covering this one more as well. Solid game. I really enjoy good abstract. You probably already know that. This is a solid one. I'll have more opinions as I play it more, but so far I'm really enjoying Gorinto. Let's do one more. Maglev Metro. This is going to be one I picked up on Friday, I want to say. I think it was Friday I grabbed this one. But either way, Maglev Metro is going to be from, this is going to be from Tad Alsbach, Bezier Games. Now, the most recent Bezier game I've played was going to be Whistle Mountain. I really enjoyed that. They had a lot of copies of that at the convention as well. Did I include that in my... I think I included in my top 10 games to buy at the convention. I think I included Whistle Mountain. But Whistle Mountain is there. Maglev Metro I haven't played yet. Maglev Metro is going to be more of a train game. It's going to be a train game where you're going to have, well, train pieces or whatever it is, where you're trying to, think Steam or think games along those lines, but with acrylic pieces so you can overlay tracks in a fun little way that you can't do in a typical train game. Overall, Maglev Metro is rated well so far. It's a 1 to 4 player game, 90 minutes. One that I look forward to diving into. Haven't actually played it. Seen it played, seen reviews, have not actually played Maglev Metro. And let's do one last one before we continue talking, which is going to be Khora. Khora is going to be a game from Yellow. It's going to be part of their expert line. Now, the expert line is something new. So there are games that they have in the past that might well fit into their expert line. Games like, they have a train game that I think should fit into the expert line. I can't remember the name of it. They have Bunny Kingdom, which may well fit into the expert line, but the expert line is technically new, so they don't actually have an expert line. But Khora looks like a fun little game. It's going to be a degree of like abstracted empire building. It's Rise of an Empire. You're going to have some asymmetric abilities and things going on as you try to pick your city-state and like optimize your actions across, you know, a limited fixed number of turns. Looks like a very cool experience. Saw a bunch of people playing this one. Sadly, have not played this one yet myself. Ratings look pretty decent, and, you know, 2 to 4 player game, running roughly 1 to 2 hours, they say. You know, expect 2 hours for your first games. Might go a little faster. Let's say a 2 player game of Khora, although I think it's best with like 3 and 4. But either way, I'll be diving more into this one, well, soon enough. So yeah, day 1 was mostly not a waste, but it was a less busy day. A lot of wandering around, less direction. A lot of the various booths weren't even there. Various companies or publishers who I've worked with and people I'm friends with weren't even there day 1. I would say I could have easily, if I were doing day 1 again, I would still have gone for the first day, especially because it's a shorter convention to begin with, but I probably would have gone 4 hours later, like aimed to arrive around 12 instead of arriving around 8. Whereas I got up really early and tried to desperately get in as fast as possible. I actually ended up being late anyway, late by my standards, not late by actually when I should have. I should have stood up at 12. I wouldn't have lost anything. It would have been fine. And I still would have gotten the first night. The first night was nice. First night I got to do a few things. The charity board game I had an event there, as well as there was another event at a bar. This is the bar I mentioned, where I got to interact with a bunch of publishers, a bunch of media content creators, people I've worked with and talked to in the space, but not people who I've met face to face. Past Jesse and Board Game Coffee. and Daryl Andrews. I've actually met a bunch of people face to face, just not most of the people I interact with. Ran into the Tantrum House crew, haven't talked to them in the past. Who else did I run into? I ran into a bunch of channels. Learn to Play was there. Publishers, Thunderworks Games, talked to them. Did you know, this is adorable, do you know why Thunderworks is called Thunderworks? You know Thunderworks Games, role play adventure, cartographers. Why are they called Thunderworks? It's because his son used to call fireworks Thunderworks. It's an adorable story. I never knew that. I picked it up because I was talking to Keith, Keith, I don't know his last name. I'm sorry, Keith. I don't know your last name. Keith, who designed Role Player. I was talking to him about this and just found out this little story. It's a cute little story. Adorable. But either way, I talked to the Chip Theory Games people. My entire point of going to Origins was really just to convince Chip Theory Games that they should like me more, because I like all their games, so why not? But really, I talked to them. It was fun. They're a fun group of people. But yeah, that was the first night of Origins. There is, by the way, the North Market. Let's see, should I talk about something else right now? We'll come back to the game shortly. Either way, there's going to be the North Market is going to be at Origins. North Market is where a lot of people go to get various food. I grabbed a coffee there. It's very helpful. But you can get any number of different things. Again, I have the kosher restrictions, so there's limited things I can or can't get. But if you want to get food, go there. Although, keep in mind, the North Market closes earlier than Origins does. So if you want to get something from the North Market, you may have to leave early. Don't wait till the convention's over and then go to the North Market. It'll be closed. Go to the North Market, come back to the convention. It's like 2 minutes away. It's not a big deal. You can walk there, walk back, get a little breather. And because we were wearing masks, and we were all wearing masks the entire time, I would say there's like a 99% mask wearing, mask wearing percentage, whatever it was, meaning most of the time people were wearing masks when they were supposed to, with taking the occasional break to drink something or eat something. But I would say nearly all the time, most of the people I engaged with were wearing masks. And let's go ahead and talk about Bayou Bash. Bayou Bash is going to be a game from well, from Weird Games. This is going to be more of a racing game, a Mario Kart style racing game, where the goal isn't to win, the goal is to gain fans. If you've ever played Jamaica, Jamaica is going to be a game where the goal is not to win, the goal is to get points, and winning will give you points. Same basic idea over here. I'm already halfway through the rules, not of this copy, because this copy is sealed, but of Jesse's copy. I'm halfway through the rules of Jesse's copy. Looking forward to diving into this one with my kids. I don't know if it's a kid game specifically. I assume it's more middle of the road, you know, adult focused, but family friendly. But it's one that my kids like the look of, so I told them I would learn it to play it with them. Then, sorry. Then we have Fire Tower. Fire Tower is one that I actually sat down to play at the convention. This is a fun little game, 15 to 30 minutes, easy enough to sit down. I think ours leaned closer to 30 minutes. We played it with the expansion, with the Fire Tower Rising Flames expansion, and I actually really like this expansion, by the way. I haven't played this game without the expansion, so I don't know for sure, but the expansion was my favorite part of the game that I played, so I think I'd only want to play with the expansion. But Fire Tower is going to be a game of, well, thematically it's off, because thematically you're trying to burn down the forest, not the forest, but your opponent's fire tower, which is not what you usually be doing, but it should be like a cooperative game of putting out fires. It's not. It's a game of, well, burning down the forest and your opponent's fire tower. This expansion is going to introduce a few new things from various cards, as well as these little firehawks, which are based on an actual animal that moves fire around the forest. They're going to pick up twigs and burn them to trap predators. And the firehawks I really liked. Solid little game. I have some nitpicks with it, but overall, I really enjoy it. Picked this one up at, well, their booth. What's the name of the company? The name of the company is Runaway Parade Games. I think Fire Tower is their only current game that they have. They ran a Kickstarter and then another Kickstarter, although they do have an upcoming Kickstarter at some point for, I think, Fruit Bowl or Super Fruit Bowl or something like that, which is another game that should have been cooperative, but morphed into being competitive. But I don't know much about that one yet. But either way, that's going to be Fire Tower. We'll talk more about this one as well. Like I said, sat down there, played it, really enjoyed it. I could have complaints about some aspects of it, which I will. You've seen my reviews. I mean, maybe you have, maybe you haven't. I talk about what I like, didn't like, and can see others not liking, so I always have nitpicks, no matter how much I like the game. I will have nitpicks, but I very much enjoed this one. I am still not sure whether I would like it more as a 2-player experience or a 4-player experience, but it's semi-abstracty. It's like a little bit of a pushing back and forth as you try to spread fire towards your opponents and defend yourself. A little bit of abstract decisions, a little bit of tactical choice of which cards in your hand to play, a little bit of prediction of how things will play out based on knowing the cards a little more. The part where it could, well, we'll talk about review stuff later. Overall, that's going to be Fire Tower. Let's do one more, which is going to be RiftForce. RiftForce is going to be a game that was a Kickstarter, and Capstone Games picked them up after. This is going to be a dueling game of, well, it's almost like an abstract strategy meets Magic the Gathering. It's a degree of dueling cards, of trying to figure out what to play at the right time, but every element has a different way it impacts the game, and so you're trying to, well, cast those to win in the game. It's a bit of a simplification because I don't remember exactly. It's been a while since I went through the full how-to on this one, but looking forward to diving into that one. But either way, I'm going to put this down here so we keep the expansion together, all nice and pretty like. But either way, that's going to be these over here, and then maybe let's grab one more, which is going to be Sagrada. Sagrada is going to be one where I already owned the base game of Sagrada, but I actually got rid of Sagrada a while ago. But they had all the expansions there. And the expansions, more specifically, both Passion and Life are going to add small modules that could mix up the game. But really, it's the 5 to 6 player expansion that has me intrigued. You see, one of the reasons I got rid of Sagrada, it's a great game, designed by Daryl Andrews. Daryl's a great guy, ran into him at the convention. But Sagrada's a great game that my biggest complaint with it was, despite liking the puzzle and going through it, and I must have played it like 10, 15 times before getting rid of it, but it's one that I didn't love the fact that in the base game of Sagrada, like 50% of your points in the game will come from the bonus card that gives you numbers. So like my number is blue, and as I place those dice into the color grid trying to score points, the real objective I have is grab blue dice that are high in value, which both takes away from the other strategic element of the game, while also giving other players the opportunity to hate draft you, resulting in the person who got hate drafted the least winning the game. So, a really good engine that I didn't like that aspect of it. Now, Sagrada, the 5 to 6 player expansion, which is horribly named by the way, also has different modules allowing for more control over drafting and giving you a different way to do bonuses where it's not based on the color, but it's based on where dice go into your grid, removing both the elements of hate drafting and just going for high numbers. So, really adds a lot more strategy in terms of how you combine all those scoring mechanics. I want to play Sagrada with that 5 to 6 player expansion. I already broke it out and played with my family again, and I read the rules for all these expansions, and I want to table those as well. Sagrada had a huge booth at Origins, by the way. They had Vivint showing, they had a Holy Festival of Colors showing. I think those are the 3 things. Holy, Vivint, and Sagrada, and all the expansions were what they were showing over there. But either way, so yeah, Day 2 was where it was really much more at. Day 2 was where I wandered around on Friday and wandered around from booth to booth, talking to various publishers, mingling with all the people. And this is great, by the way. Like, one of the things I told people in prior videos, like, hey, if you watch the channel, if you watch my stuff, you see me, come on over, say hi. Don't be intimidated by it because, I mean, keep in mind, I've been gaming for 9 years or 10 years, and I've been doing videos for a year and a half. This is all new to me. It's still new to me. And there's a degree of intimidation with anyone because you never know who wants to be interrupted. If you see, if you see Shut Up and Sit Down wandering around a convention, do they want to be interrupted or would it be an annoyance, a frustration? It's not a critique. It's just when you have enough of an audience, at a certain point, being interrupted by people you don't actually know can be a little frustrating. Eric Lang once said that being board game famous is the perfect amount of famous. He can turn it on. I mean, he could be on at conventions and be smiling and happy and engaged, but then he goes back to his regular life and no one knows who he is, which is probably true. And double that, triple that for me. Even at a board game convention, most people don't know who I am, but there are a small handful of people who fortunately did take the time to to say, "Hi, Alex, I watch your stuff. Like, good to see you here." And then we talk for a few minutes, and I appreciate that. And one of the reasons I said that to interrupt me, to see if you see me, just go ahead, say hi, do whatever, grab a selfie, whatever it is because I want that myself. Again, it doesn't, I have a decent audience on YouTube, sure, but I really just want, I'm in it for the people. I'm in it for the people in terms of, I want that feeling too. I walked past Isaac Childress, designer of Gloomhaven, and I was like, I wanted to say, hey, Gloomhaven, it's so cool, it's cool to meet you, and I didn't because I don't know if he welcomes that interruption or if it's annoying or frustrating. Again, these aren't critiques against these people. So if it's down, Isaac, I don't know what their policy is or isn't. But that degree of intimidation that I might have towards interrupting somebody else, being uncertain whether they're comfortable with it, if you ever see him at a convention, ever, in any way, shape, or form, feel free to interrupt me. Like, the space we're in is cool. But the very nature of the space we're in, the very nature of board games as a hobby, is it's a hobby about connecting people. And so I'm all for the connecting of people. I'm all for the idea that if in any way you see me, and if you've been watching my videos, whatever it is, if you want to interrupt me, you want to say hi, you want to say anything, whatever it is, just talk about how the convention's going, what game you played that day, what game you're most excited for at the convention, all of that stuff. I got to sit there and talk to somebody for like a few minutes about Ankh, talking about strategies and whether we like it more than Blood Rage or not, or this or that. I got to talk with a bunch of people about a bunch of things, which was a lot of fun. So yeah, if you ever see me at a convention, interrupt me. But yeah, going around the day, so the day was basically wandering booth to booth. There were a lot of filler booths. By filler, I mean things I'm not as interested in, whether it's like students or other things that, by students, I mean there were a bunch of students dealing with video games, which I don't really care about. But it's nice that the convention allowed them there. I don't care. I just am not personally interested in a bunch of VR or video game stuff. And then there were like other things that I'm less interested in, but still kind of cool, various costumes, swords, accessories, all those fun things. For me, I'm really just about the board games. I don't care about miniature games or card games. I'm happy they exist. I'm happy they serve a need for someone else. I'm just in it for the board games. And speaking of which, we have Sanctum by AEG. Sanctum by AEG is one that I hesitated picking this one up. This one's been on my radar for a long time. Sanctum always looks very pretty. If you look at that, it looks very pretty. Now, the reviews on this one are a little bit mixed. It's decently rated, don't get me wrong, but it's not one that people seem to love. And primarily, it seems to be about the fact that the game is all about building up your character and then going through the end game confrontation with the boss, which will test how well you've done. And the reviews on Sanctum are mixed. I'm looking forward to playing it. It looks very pretty. I like CGE in general as a company. I figure worst case scenario, it's a good game. Whether it's a great game or not, we'll see. But, I mean, look at that. Look at that again. Doesn't that make you want to play it? Doesn't it look cool? If you like anything with heroes and abilities and dungeons and all this stuff, it's funny, I was talking to somebody else at the convention who said, like, oh yeah, you're the guy who likes like dungeons and abilities and all these things. I was like, I also like heavy Euros. A lot. Some of my favorite games are heavy Euros. They're harder to cover on the channel as frequently or as often. I actually have a video coming about that, about the nature of heavy games and why they're harder to deal with and engage with. But before we do, let's talk about the Night Cage. The Night Cage is going to be by Smirk and Dagger. This is going to be a game that was on Kickstarter a bit ago. It's a game about wandering and trying to get out of the dark together with your friends. 1 to 5 players, roughly an hour for the game. It's a game that I kind of wrote it off when I first started on Kickstarter, but reviews have been coming in more and more. And overall, it's one that I'm excited to dive into and see how it plays. Supposedly, it plays best very thematically with like a candle on the table, the lights out, because the game simulates being in the dark. You're constantly losing sight of your trail. Speaking of losing sight of your trail, Convention or Origins is a big place. Very smooth. tangent there. Origin's a big place. In fact, on Sunday, I brought back my entire family. I brought back my family with me, my kids. They were running on the convention. My son, you may have seen my son, Tavi, in a Come On unboxing for Ankh, speaking of Ankh. But he is a force unto himself. He was running around the convention, just like completely not a care in the world. And like, he's one of those people who answers questions factually. He doesn't answer questions with context, he answers them factually. And so you had people who were like asking him, I found this out after, they'd be like Booth saying, do you know where your dad is? And he'd be like, nope, and then run off. He was answering factually, no, I don't know where my dad is. He wasn't answering with context of, no, I'm not lost. Because my kids they knew exactly where to go, they knew where the bathrooms were, they knew where the safe booth was, booth where Ivy Games, Austin from Ivy Games is nice enough to basically play, if my kids get lost, that's the booth they run to when I pick them up. And then they all had a little business card with my number in it with instructions to call me if they actually needed me, which the whole convention, the whole day on Sunday, they needed to do one time. They have firm rules and instructions of how to navigate the convention, but my 5-year-old son, who's very short and looks like he might be 3 or 4 tops, it's actually 6. My 6-year-old son, who looks like he might be like 3 or 4, is running around without a care in the world, looking like he's lost, and just not concerned in the slightest. The whole time he was never concerned. Other adults watching him were, but he was totally fine while he zipped around and tried to play being cute to get as much swag as he could from various booths or whatever, getting stickers and bags and books and pencils and dice and all these things. The stuff they walked away with was very impressive. But overall, Sunday was a fun day. Going to mention with the kids. Sunday is free for kids, I believe. I don't know if it's true every year. This year, Sunday was free for kids. So we went with the whole family on Sunday, wandered around, bought the kids some cosplay foam swords that they enjoyed. But it was fun. A little bit hectic, because there was one point where I did think I lost my kids, but, because keep in mind, they had a number to call me, I didn't have a number to call them, and so at one point I couldn't find one of my kids for like half an hour, and I just kept wandering around, and the nature of it is you can get lost, kind of like the Night Cage, very thematic tie-in there. But overall, all's well that ends well, he was found, he was never lost, by the way, to be clear, he wasn't lost, I just was circling around not finding him. But that can happen, but overall, it was a lot of fun. They really enjoyed it. They want to go back next year, which is nice, because I want to go back next year. And speaking of things I did with my kids, we had Catapult Feud from Yellow Games. This is another game that was on Kickstarter. Yellow picked it up. Catapult Feud is going to be a game, but, well, using your catapults to knock down opposing soldiers on towers. That's basically the game. Throw in a few ability cards, but that's all it really is. Not a game I would pick up for myself, way too light for me, but one that my kids enjoyed. It's basically like Coconuts or any of those games that involve some form of flinging or flicking or something that they'd enjoy, and they had fun with it. So grab this one. They just sat there like pulling it back, just shooting things the entire time. But yeah, and then multiple times when I wandered around looking for my kids, they were at the display, just shooting their little catapults into various soldiers. If you've ever played Crossbows and Catapults, an older game, Catapult Feud is kind of like the new version for the new generation. But yeah, Sunday was a good day. Sunday was family day for the kids, for everything else. The main rule they had is they can pick one thing before they left, within reason. Some of the things they wanted were like $200 foam swords or whatever it was. They were allowed to choose one thing within reason, like a $30, $40 budget each, enjoy their day, have fun. And they did. My daughter came home with like elf ears and various cosplay to be an elf. My children came home, my 2 boys came home with weapons, swords and throwing stars and that kind of thing. And then we also have two more games. We have Lawyer Up from Rock Manor Games. Lawyer Up is going to be one this is going to be a game that was on Kickstarter from Rock Manor. Rock Manor they've done a few things. They've done the Maximum Apocalypse series. They did The Few and the Cursed. They have a bunch of games under the belt. They have they have a roll and write that I really like called Merchants of Magic. And they have Rock Manor games. They have Lawyer Up, which is going to be a kind of 2-player head-to-head game of fighting cases or whatnot. So you have a bunch of cards, you have various cases, while you play a little bit of tug of war. Think games like Blitzkrieg, think games like Watergate, where you have a tug of war between different elements, and then the game's kind of this glue behind that keeps the whole thing focused. But overall, one that I'm looking forward to diving into. I sat down and played it for like a few minutes, didn't get a full game in, but I'm intrigued by it, curious to see how well a full game holds up. I know there's mixed reviews in this one. Some people really liking it, some people more on the fence. I'm looking forward to Rock Manor Games' next Kickstarter. I don't know what's public, so I'm not going to say anything there just yet. And then lastly, speaking of my little kids, we have Critters at War. Critters at War is going to be a game. This is going to be Air, Land, and Sea, just with the cartoon version. Gorgeous art, if you haven't seen this yet. I don't know if you've seen this, but I love Air, Land, and Sea. It's a great game. I had to pick up the cartoon art version because as much as I didn't have a problem with the regular version, I do prefer the cartoon art. It's much cooler looking. Eager to dive into this one and play it again. Not that I don't play it. I play it on a regular basis, but I'm happy to play this one again. And that should be everything as far as the convention stuff, the board games I came home with. But there'll be coverage on all of these at some point, I assume. Most of them, all of them, probably. We'll see. I have a long list of games to review. Games that I already had on my list and more. I'm happy I didn't go to Gen Con. There's only so much stuff I can actually cover. But we'll get to it all. We will get to it all. There's still upcoming Kickstarters. I still do way too many Kickstarter content, way too many Kickstarter reviews, so those take up a lot of time as well. And I only do like 3 or 4 reviews a week. I only use a relative term. I play on average 2 to 3 games a day. In the past 30 days, I've played more than 100 games. More than 100 plays, not 100 games. I've played, I think, like 40 different games and 100 plays in the past 30 days. I use BG Stats, a little app to track everything. I like that a lot. And yeah, if you ever watch the weekend reviews, I talk about what I've played, what I have coming up, things I'm excited about, all that kind of stuff. And the 100 plays is not even counting what I forgot. I always forget stuff. I estimate that I log 85% of my plays. There's always things I forget. I'm not every time just punched to my phone. It depends on when I get to the table or not. But overall, this is very rambly. I apologize for that. I actually set these all up planning on just talking about the games, and I was like, I'll talk about the convention experience. I really enjoyed my first convention. Let's wrap this up. I really enjoyed my first convention. I don't go to conventions to play games. Not yet. I'm willing to play games. I've played a few of these while at the convention. And I assume I'll go to more conventions in the future. Maybe Dice Tower West, Board Game Geek. I'll go to other conventions in the future while I play games. And if I ever do, same rules apply. If you want to play a game with me and you see me standing around, by all means, I'm down. Well, probably down. I might be doing something else, but I'm probably down. But definitely don't feel shy about asking me. But it's just a time management thing of, again, having a job, having kids, and then the nature of sitting down playing games elsewhere. Like leaving my wife to go play games with other people when I could have been sitting at home playing games with her is a weird balance, which we're still navigating. We'll figure it out. The main goal is my wife is first and foremost, and then board games are second. Coffee is third. Kids are third. Coffee is fourth. But yeah, so we'll see how that goes. So I didn't go to Origins to play games, although I did play some games. Navigating around the booths was fun. Games are more expensive at conventions than they are, if you're buying them, online or whatever it is. But people who go to conventions, for the most part, by the time you factor in the cost, like I gave up 2 days of work, 2 days of paid work, whatever it is, plus I had a car breakdown for like a few $100s there, plus the cost of going to the convention, the gas, all these different things, the food. If you're going to a convention, you're doing it because it's an experience. Part of that experience is walking out with tote bags full of games that you paid $5 to $10 more than you could have bought it online. It's part of the experience. It is what it is. Sometimes you're getting games you don't have access to otherwise. Sometimes you're getting first dibs on games. Again, I would not recommend a convention as a place to buy games cheaply. I would recommend a convention as a place to live a little, to dive more into the world of board games that we're having. There's a bunch of more board games I didn't have the chance to buy because they sold out or whatever it was before I can get to them. I plan on doing another list. There's going to be another video coming up, probably with some form of B-roll, about 10 games or so that I saw at the convention that I want to explore further. Games that I didn't have a chance to explore yet. These are the games I walked home with. There's still more games I did not walk home with. And so we'll talk about those as well in a future upcoming video. Until next time, I'm Alex Ratcliffe from Board Game Co. Thanks for sticking with me on this way too long video, talking about my first convention experience, what I came home with, different games, how they interested me, and all of that. And as always, have a good one.